All right, so Mike Tyson and his company manufacture a fake pay-per-view record to try to trick fans into buying the Roy Jones Jr. fight. I woke up this morning with these announcements of pre-sale pay-per-view records being broke. As soon as I heard it, I thought, oh my God, here we go again. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back. So first and foremost, I am over 50 years old, just like Roy Jones Jr. and just like Mike Tyson. Roy Jones Jr., I do believe, is like 2 or 3 months older than me, and Mike Tyson, I do believe, is like 2 years older than me. And let me assure you, I am too daggone old to be getting in a boxing match and boxing ring, and anybody that is paying to see 52 and soon to be 52 and 54-year-old men wear gigantic gloves and punch each other, kind of, I guess, no real punches for 2-minute rounds with no outcome and no knockouts. If you want to pay $50 for that, knock yourself out. Personally, I will not be doing that, and I would not have covered this fight at all if it was not for this nonsense that I just saw come out. And trust me, it's not nonsense. So Mike Tyson comes out and says, hey, I'm just letting you know, numbers don't lie. The haters are going to hate. And then something called the PR Newswire releases. He puts a press release from the PR Newswire. Right there, when I heard PR Newswire, I knew that this was fake. Because public relations is just that. It's public relations. It's not news. It's not public relations and news, right? At least not the way that I think about it. A PR guy, his job is to make the public have a better relationship with you, which means and how do they do that? By putting out articles and different bits of content out to your fan base or potential fan base to get them to like you and think highly of you and get interested in you. That's their purpose. Their purpose is not news. It's not journalism. It's not to educate you. It's not to give you vital information. They'll help you decide whether or not you want to see this fight or not. It's just to give you anything that might get you to watch the fight. And that's exactly what this is. It's absolute nonsense. The idea that this thing is actually breaking any type of pre-sale records, honestly, man, it's just stupid on his face, and people should know that's stupid on his face. But let's go through why. Number one, PR is not news. I looked up the agency that put it out, PR Newswire. PR Newswire is a PR agency. It's not a newswire. It's not the AP. What they're doing is they're putting out Newswire. They say PR Newswire so that you'll think it's news because you see Newswire must be news. No, PR, public relations, not news. Propaganda. Closer to propaganda than it is to news, or somewhere in between news and propaganda is public relations. So get out of here. The person that said it, you shouldn't listen to. But then just think about this. You're saying that they broke a pre-sale record. A pre-sale record for what? A pre-sale record for pay-per-views? Who tracks that? Exactly. This is supposed to be on Fight TV. How do you get access to the pre-sale records for a pay-per-view that's taking place with Errol Spence Jr. and Terrence and Danny Garcia? Who exactly is going to give the PR wire that information about what what Fox's pre-sale pay-per-views were, or what Gervonta's pre-sale pay-per-view tickets were, or what Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s pre-sale? You see what I'm saying? It's not a record. Who pays attention to pre-sale? And how can you pre-sale a pay-per-view? If it's a pay-per-view, because it can't be, I have to assume they're not talking about like a live crowd, because how could that happen? We're in the middle of a coronavirus. So if you're talking about pay-per-views, then what is a pre-sale pay-per-view? As soon as the fight is what, in like a week or two? Like, you can buy the pay-per-view as soon as they put it up. It's just right off the face you should know that that's nonsense, man, and not something you should take seriously, right? Now, here's my thing, okay? I don't mind at all Roy Jones Jr. and Mike Tyson making a bunch of money, throwing big pillow punches at each other. It's worth the money for a lot of people. There are a lot of people that are going to have a feeling of nostalgia around seeing these guys walk into the ring, right? You haven't seen Roy Jones Jr. in years. You have not seen Mike Tyson in decades in a ring. Both of their bodies are going to look like they're in really, really good shape. So, hey, man, this should be a good event, right? $50 isn't too crazy. I don't mind that people are watching the fight. I'm not watching the fight because I'm a boxing fan. I'm not a fan of exhibitions. I'm not going to, like, for example, I don't have a problem with Floyd Mayweather Jr. fighting Paul Logan or Logan Paul, whatever his name is, if he wants to beat that dude up and make a bunch of money. These guys should be able to make that money. I don't have any issues with it. You know, it's not like, you know, Roy Jones Jr. and Mike Tyson, these guys can go get network jobs talking about boxing, right? Because half the people on those staff are guys that are just media guys that know nothing about boxing. But there's only like 4 networks and there's the limited number of spots, right? If they can make the money, I don't have a problem with them making the money. However, let's not confuse this with the real fight. And also, the idea, let's just assume for a second that what they're saying about this pre-sale record, it just sounds ridiculous on its face. But this pre-sale record, let's just assume that this pre-sale record is actually a thing, right? I mean, I guess it could be a thing if the record is the most pre-sales for fight for a FITE fight, right? The network that's going to air it, like that's their pre-sale pay-per-view record. Okay, if that's the record that you're talking about, okay, I guess it could be a record. But look, man, if anybody's buying this fight, dude, besides people that are just like really nostalgic for seeing these guys walk in the ring, dog, this seems to me to be a desperation for a real big fight. Because if you look at the fight between Roy Jones Jr. and Mike Tyson, what is it? It's a fight between 2 legendary Black American fighters. And guess what we don't get in boxing anymore? We do not get fights between legendary Black fighters in boxing anymore. Does not happen. When is the last time that happened? Right? I really can't think of it. I'm sure maybe somebody can tell me, but when was it? Right? Was it somebody with Deontay Wilder, not in the heavyweight division? Has it been with Canelo Alvarez? No. I mean, no. I'm saying, like, the closest thing that we've been getting, somebody may be able to correct me, but the closest thing we've seen to that in a while, I think, may be Terrence Crawford versus Sean Porter, right? It's just because we don't spend as much time and energy, or the media doesn't, developing Black fighters. Like HBO spent a long time developing Roy Jones, even though they didn't talk about him as well as, you know, as they probably should have. And Mike Tyson is Mike Tyson, right? Those 2 guys fighting each other bring a crowd together, an American fight crowd together that want to see these 2 guys fight. I really wish that boxing, the powers that be at boxing, could think, hey, maybe we should try to do the same thing, but with fighters that are actually like at the top of their game, with fighters that are, you know, that are world-class fighters now. Like, I don't know, Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr., maybe Gary Russell Jr. I know this is a much smaller fight. Gary Russell Jr. versus Gervonta Tank Davis, right? But we're not doing those, right? What we're doing is in no insult to Floyd Mayweather, doing the Floyd Mayweather model, where every Black fighter is in a rush to hurry up to find how many Mexican fighters they can fight, right? to see how many, mildly competitive Mexican fighters that they can fight, so that they can continue to, like, grow their fighter, right? But yet be an eternal prospect and never actually bump heads with the guy that has a chance to beat you. And I think that is going to be the case for pretty much all of them, right? Devin Haney can't fight Gary Russell. Gary Russell can't fight Tank Davis. Tank Davis is never going to fight Devin Haney. You know what I mean? It's just absolutely ridiculous, dude. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's so hard to even make an Errol Spence Jr. versus Terrence Crawford fight, right? But hey, at least we can we can, for a second, with Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr., go back to the day when we used to be able to see fights like Sugar Ray Leonard versus Marvelous Marvin Hagler, and Tommy Hearns versus Hagler, and Tommy Hearns versus Sugar Ray Leonard, and all these really, really great fights, man. Even that's just the sad part of boxing in the United States that has gone away, because Bob Arum and because two of the three major promotional companies in the United States want to spend all their energy on people that are not from the United States, and figure that that's how they can grow the sport of boxing. Well, it hasn't worked yet, and I don't see you guys breaking any pre-sale pay-per-view records. And the fact that Mike Tyson and Roy Jones can be of more interest to many people than actual boxing is a sad state of affairs. And it says a lot about Top Rank, says a lot about Golden Boy Promotions. Those, and I'm not going to say the PBC, because the PBC are putting those fighters out, but those major outfits, got no time for it. You know what I mean? But anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know yours. And with that, I'm out. Peace.